And welcome to today's live stream where we're basically going to talk about the dumpster fire that was us pivoting the business. It was real dumpster fiery.
Real
we did
talk.
it, yeah, we did it back in, I think it was like August or September, right? Where we basically went
that long ago. Yes.
It feels like it was 10 years ago because that's how much I've aged since then. We basically were like, okay, look, I'm teaching Etsy. I'm not super enjoying teaching Etsy. And I want to transition to teaching something that we're better at that also doesn't rely on another platform for us to have a business, because that seemed dicey. I did not like that. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I've run my course with this because I was not currently making my money on Etsy. And I didn't feel like it was reasonable for me to be teaching people when literally 100% of my income was coming from a completely separate online business model that was not Etsy. So we're just going to get into what occurred. There's definitely 3 specific things that I want to cover here in terms of how we changed the dumpster fire. But first, I think we should detail the dumpster fire a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
let's do that. Let's dive in this together. You take my hand, I'll take your hand, and we'll just dive into this one together.
Yeah. What do you remember that went the worst for you during that time, Chris?
Do you know what? I'll be very honest with you. None of it really was the worst for me. I don't know if I would necessarily describe it in that way. I would just sort of say I think it was a little bit like when you drop a stone into the water and the ripples effect. And I think that was the day that we sent out the email. And we just had people sort of come back going, wait, what?
Yeah.
You know, what does this mean? I think the worst part of it was probably the headache that I had. The headache just wouldn't sort of go away for a few days about it, because we had to sort of, everything was there, everything was explained. We explained why we were doing this, but there was so much of having to repeat ourselves and having to explain and say, no, that's not what we're saying. No, that's not. And there was, and it was just that people. When people panic, I think people formulate their own opinions and they take those opinions as being concrete, which I think we've all done that. We've all done that when we panicked over something, going, "Oh my God, that means this," and it's like, actually, no, it doesn't mean that at all. And I think that was probably the hard part, was to pick out the bits that weren't correct in what we were saying. So when people were saying, so you're basically, because if you remember, a lot of people said, so you're pivoting to teach people how to teach courses. And we're like,
no, we never said that anywhere.
We've never said that. And it was pulling out those threads to say, no, that's not what we're doing. No, that's not what we're doing. This because actually we're going to provide you even more support. This is a good thing. This is a positive. At no stage are we saying that Etsy is this awful, awful thing. We're saying that actually Etsy for us wasn't good for us. On that one, and because I had to explain to people, I don't have a shop anymore. Jenny doesn't have a shop anymore. Like you have to see that from the bigger picture of from that. And I will say, a lot of people after having that chat, a lot of people sort of stood back and went, oh, actually, yeah, okay, I get that. And even after pulling out some of those threads and saying, on there, some people said, well, I don't want to learn how to be to teach a course. I said, I just said to you, that's not what we're doing. But so I would probably say the worst part about it was the inaccuracies, the things that people said that we'd said that we didn't actually say.
Yeah. Yeah. This brings me to kind of like my first point, where it's like, if you want to pivot, or if you're kind of moving away from something you used to do, or you want to move into something else, and you're bringing an audience with you like we did, we should have warned people. First of all, about 2 months before, we didn't know we were making the transition 2 months before.
Yeah.
Had we known, and had I been a little bit less eager to just move on with my life, I was kind of feeling very trapped, and I was just like, I'm ready to change.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel that. And I think what I would tell myself then, if I could talk to her, is I would say, you need to take a month or 2 to warm your audience to this and explain. And talk about the different pros and cons, and go through this and start trying what you're going to be doing in a new way so that people aren't just going to, freak out and be shocked. We did it in a very shocking way because, like, honestly, it was shocking for us. Like, Chris, I think I just came to you and I was like, I don't want to do this in this way anymore. Here's what I want to do instead. And I thought you were going to be like, no, and freak out. And you were like, I get it. But we went through periods even within the company where you're like, I don't understand. I'm freaking out. I'm upset. Everybody had to freak out at some point. Like, everybody who works for me, including myself, had to freak out at some point. And it was just like, people hate change. They hate it. And when you throw change at them, they just go blind and they can't see what you're talking about. Like, we clearly explained everything in that one email, and we had multiples to follow, but people just kept seeing what they wanted to see. And they just kept going, red flashing lights, change, change, change. It makes you completely blind. And I understand that because that happens to me too. I'll be like, wait, so what? I won't even keep reading. I'll be like, wait, what? You're telling me what? I do the same thing, but we could have gone about it differently. So if you do choose to pivot, drop Easter eggs in there that you're going to pivot for a while.
Yeah.
Talk about it, lead up to it. Something big is coming. This is happening. Like, we're doing this, we're doing that. We could have done all of that so much more smoothly. But I think there was a combination of things going on that we just wanted to get out of our lives. We had a bad contractor. We had a lot of things that we weren't liking about the company. We were really starting to feel like we were turning very corporate, and that was disgusting, both of us. And we just couldn't, it was like sitting in a puddle of corporate that was slowly drowning us, and we couldn't take it anymore. That's how I felt, at least.
No, I think you described that beautifully.
I can't tread this corporate water anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. So I had to make a rapid change. I'm kind of glad that I did, because I learned all of these things about pivoting.
Yes.
And about pivoting quickly, and also about pivoting without a clear focus. So if you had asked me in August, I would have been like, oh, I know exactly what we're going to do when we pivot. But now, me in November, oh my God, has it only been 3 months, 2 months?
That's what I mean. It feels like
it's been an eternity.
It feels like a lot longer.
It's been a literal eternity. I feel like if November me talked to August me, November me would say, you don't have a focus. Your focus is too broad. What you're doing is not clear. It's going to confuse people, and you need to know exactly what you're doing and have it physically up so you can show it to people before you move forward.
And in truth, actually, from the purposes of being completely honest here, actually, we had a conversation very similar to that. You and I, we did. And we had a very similar, where I sort of said to you, I'm not completely clear on this. But because, as you said, because there were so many things that led up to it, and there was so many things that were like, we were in a corporate, we had the contractor that was difficult. And by the time we sort of got to where we were at that moment in time, it just felt like no, pull the handbrake up, turn the car around, we're going back completely the opposite direction. And I think that was, but the nice thing about it is, at the time, whilst it was rocky at the time, looking back on it now, and I know we're sort of talking about like, oh, wow, like, did that really happen? But now we're looking back on it, it is an amazing lesson that we've learned. It's amazing that we've actually been able to go, right, okay, right, get it now, on that one. And I think it's been a lot. I think it's been a hard lesson, but I think it's been a fantastic lesson.
Yeah, like, if I was going to pivot now, the exact blueprint I would follow would basically be throw in Easter eggs for at least 4 to 8 weeks before I pivot. Then it would be make sure that I have a crystal clear focus that everyone is going to understand when I pivot. So I can literally say, go over here and look at this. Yeah. It doesn't have to be like a platform. It just needs to be at least a page, something that clearly explains, something that people can maybe interact with and sort of see. Like, I still think people aren't completely clear on what we're doing. What I call us now is focus coaches, because we teach creative entrepreneurs how to focus, because what we've learned in our business is ultimately focus equals money.
Yeah.
You're doing 5,000 things at once, you're never going to make any money at all. But when you focus, and so many people never get to the part where they focus, they just give up while they're focusing on 5,000 things because they think it's impossible. And they're like, this is too hard. How's anybody do it? I'm going to go back to a regular job. The reality is, if they had just settled down and focused on one thing in their business, it would have exploded. So that is what we're teaching now. But at no point was I ever clear about that. So now I would do Easter eggs, clear thing that explains what we do in a sentence like that, for sure. A place that people can go to see it, for sure, as well. And the other thing that we did that I kind of feel like we messed up a little bit on is we've rebranded twice now. So we were Fuzzy and Birch. We were Jenny Co for a short while. We're about to be Unfocusedpreneur because that's our final and last, because that's what describes what we do. Jenny Co didn't describe what we do. We liked it. It was short and sweet and snappy. But we realized it didn't describe what we did at all. So I'm not totally against going into a pivot without having everything crystal clear, because going into this pivot and basically being pushed off a ledge and falling off a cliff for 2 months and then realizing, oh, I have a parachute, I can pull this cord. And I pulled the focus cord and everything sort of fell into place a lot more. And obviously we have things booked out for months and months in terms of like content and stuff. So you guys are going to see this rolling out and you'll see exactly what we mean. But like if you don't pull that focus cord, you'll hit the bottom, like you'll hit the valley of the cliff and you'll hit hard.
Yeah.
And falling off the cliff forced me to pull that focus cord way faster. I wouldn't have learned that focus lesson even for myself if I hadn't have actually just been like falling through midair, terrified, basically like, oh, this isn't working. Oh, this isn't working. Oh, this isn't working. Shit. We have to fix this.
Yeah.
So those are the sort of things that I feel are really vital in terms of if you do choose to pivot, keep these things in mind. Or if you're sort of changing the way that your business looks, make sure you're telling your audience what's happening and there's a place for them to go to see it so they can understand it. Would have made all the difference for us. Do you want to talk about any of the things we did right? Did we do anything right, Chris?
I think, do you know what? I think we did more right things than not. Truly, I really do. And I think it's when you're in that panic of, oh, this is like it feels like so much more of a bigger thing. But just sitting here looking back at it, going, actually, no, there's been a lot of lessons learned. There's been a lot of, oh, actually, if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have realized this. And if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have done this. And if we didn't do that, then we wouldn't have done this. And it's like, and all these things have led us to where we are now. And I think that is great. And I think, and just as you were just talking there, one of the biggest things, and I know I've mentioned this before when we've been live, is that when you and I have spoken, and I've been quite, when I might have said to you and just gone, what's happening? Like, what are we doing here? And I've almost come to you with an expectation to you to have all the answers for everything. And you've just stopped, and that has happened. That has happened before, where I've gone to Jenny and almost just said, look, this is X, give me the answers. Give me all the answers. I need all the answers now. And Jenny just sits there and will just say to me, Chris, I'm not perfect. And that's the brilliance here. Nobody's perfect. And I genuinely think this, we can talk about, that, yes, that was scary, that was worrying and all that type of thing, but actually it's leading us to a fantastic place. And we, if we hadn't have done all these things, we wouldn't have got to that point where we're like, actually, it's the focus that makes money. And we wouldn't have experienced, without mentioning names, there's been plenty of people that we've said, you need to get focused. We've helped them, we've coached them, and now they are going on to make money just because all they did was focus. We've helped them to realize that and explain that. And I think just having those seeds there is a massive thing. I think it's a huge thing.
I agree. And I would definitely say, I can't remember how many times you said to me over the last few months when I was like, oh my God, I feel out of control. We need to figure out what we're doing. Because I wasn't really saying it that way, but I was like, I'm a little lost too, Chris. I'm trying to figure out what we need to do and what we need to call it. Yeah. And honestly, a lot of my failures led to me figuring it out. So if YouTube had done really well, I think I would have just kept doing what I was doing and never figured out that oh, people aren't responding that great to these videos.
Yeah.
They don't like it. Like, plain and simple. There's nothing else that I can say about it. I need to change it. They want something different. It's too confusing. I'm not giving them something clear. They're like, that's pretty obvious pretty quickly when you're failing at something. So I think that helped massively. But being able to just say to you, like, I'm really lost. And you would say back to me, what do we tell our clients? We tell them they need to focus on one thing. Like, I remember the day after I stayed up till like 4 a.m. editing Instagram reels, because why did I think that Instagram was going to change the game? Like, why did I even spend all that time on it? In retrospect, like, I could go on and on about how Instagram is just a huge waste of time, for me anyway.
Yeah.
And you were like, what's the point of this? Like, how is this leading us where we want to go? And I launched this huge thing. And if you launch into this huge thing, you know you're not focused.
Yeah.
If I can't answer you in one sentence, I am not focused. And this is how when people are coaching and they launch into this huge big thing, there's usually only one tiny detail I need to pick out. It's like their conversation is this whole panel and the detail is like this big that I need out of that whole thing, because when you're not focused, you can't see that that detail matters.
Yeah.
When you are focused, all you can see is that detail. And then when you fix it, everything changes basically overnight. Like, focus is the thing that leads to fast success, overnight success, huge success. And sometimes it leads to rocky overnight success, but it gets there. It gets you there faster. You know what I mean? And you said that to me so many times. It was so interesting to hear my own advice fed back to me so frequently, because I mean, obviously we feed our own advice back to each other all the time, but like, you were saying it to me almost daily.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we'd have plenty of conversations where I think you'd like record me a voicemail or something like that, and I would just go back to you and just say, you're saying this, but the advice that we would give to anyone like this is do this. So why aren't we doing that? And you would just write me just a message back with just an LOL, just going, yeah, why am I not doing that? So I have a few people that I do coach, and well, no, sorry,
a few. You mean
I
like
was going to say I have quite a few people that I coach. I don't know where a few came from there at all. But I have this one particular person that I coach, who I absolutely love. She's based here in England as well, and with her, she tries to do a million things all at once. And I spoke to her very recently, just a couple of days ago, and I was talking about this, and she understands the logic from focusing on one thing, but she explained it to me in a brilliant way. She went, the problem is, Chris, she went, if I don't do all these things, my brain tells me I'm being lazy. My brain tells me I'm not doing enough. My brain says, you're only going to do that one thing, and that's it. Like, and it was great, and I was able to work with her on that and say, but do you not realize that by splitting your attention between all these things, you're only giving like 20% of your focus to these things, when in actual fact, if you concentrate on one, you're going to get things done quicker. But that was quite an eye-opening conversation. That only happened a couple of days ago on that one. So
that is so on point, and it's so fascinating, because I feel like in any normal job or in school, or how most of us spent our childhood and teenagehood, you only got benefit from working hard.
Yeah.
So that basically teaches you that in order to get a benefit, you have to suffer a little bit.
Yeah.
And we start to learn that if we're not suffering, then success is not possible. And that's just not true. It's hard to believe that it's not true for many of us, because it's all we've ever known.
Yeah.
And if you had told me that 3 years ago, I would have been like, no, that's not accurate. Just leave, please. But it is true. The challenge is you take all that energy that you have for the million things, and you channel it into the one. And most people, you have to get over the boredom hump. So the boredom hump is what happens when you're hyper focused on one thing and your brain is like, but we could do this and we could do this and we could do this. Nope. You have to pressure your brain to stay in that focus zone on the one thing. And honestly, I would say with the people we're working with, we're seeing the people we're working closely, it's taking them a month or more to get into that focus zone and not have a million things, where they know what their focus is and they understand it is their top line. It's really what they are thinking about day in and day out. Maybe they're thinking about another thing here and there, but it's on the horizon. It's like a phase 2 rollout, after they've finished what they're working on now.
Yeah.
When you get over that boredom hump, you land in a place that is really interesting. I call it the extra credit zone. Because I don't know what else to call it. It's where the people who really succeed land, because they're willing to push their brain past that discomfort and land in a place where they're willing to work harder on what they're doing, the one thing they're doing, than anyone else is. So that's why I call it the extra credit zone. Basically, if you're willing to sit back and work hard enough on something that you're going to do the extra credit for it instead of going off in this other direction, that's what we see when we look at huge businesses that are run by one person, or really successful Etsy shops, really successful YouTube channels. These are the people. For the rest of us are like, I don't want to script another video. These people are scripting everything and reading things and doing it and storyboarding it and doing that extra credit. Whereas the rest of us are like, I just want to sit in front of the camera and do a talking head. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the extra credit. When you force yourself into this zone, you have to channel all that extra energy you would be using for all this other stuff into that. And if you sit there long enough, you'll find that there's plenty of space to be creative and do stuff in your focus zone.
Yeah.
So much so that you could still wind up with a schedule where you're super busy if you so choose. You don't have to. There's a point of diminishing returns where the extra credit just is not going to make that big of a difference. But that jump from doing everything to getting in the focus zone to getting in sort of like the extra credit zone, that is like really a magical place that honestly I knew existed, but we were not leveraging in our own business until honestly in October, when we kind of had these realizations. And it's really interesting to me to look at how quickly we made this. It's like we keep saying like August. Was it really August?
Yeah.
It's like so recent. You know what I mean? When you look at, if I look at what our business did in 2021, I think about what was I shooting for in January 2021 and what was my goal for last year. We achieved our goal relatively quickly, but it was slow going, making the progress we wanted to make. We basically ran around chasing our tail for the majority of 2021, trying to make things work that when I sat down and did the math on them, it was actually mathematically impossible that they would make me the amount of money that I wanted them to make me. So I tend to go into things like, can this make me $10,000 a month? Then I will put all my time and energy into it. And I try to do that because asking myself a big question like that leads me to the perspective of, is this worth me putting all my energy into it? Can it make me $10,000 a month? Yes, it can. Do I want to do it? Yes, I do. Okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
If those two things aren't there, sometimes I even ask a third question, will it matter in a year? Sometimes it doesn't. If I can answer those three questions, yes, then I'm like, okay, I'll spend my time on this. I'll devote all my energy to this. I'm cool with it. But we did that with tasks that would not make us $10,000 a month over and over and over again in 2021. And some of it was this bad contractor, but we are adults and we know what we're doing. And I could have sat down and done that math at any time, but I didn't. That was very much my responsibility for basically running us in circles. And like, when I look back at the business, I'm like, I spent a lot of years running in circles, but we made this fast progress because we failed. And we made this fast progress because I was basically flailing in the water like, shit, we have to get out of here. We have to find a way for this to work because it's not working. And it was very in my face. It was like, stats are down, traffic is down, this is down, that is down, the interest is down. Like, these people are leaving more negative comments than we've ever gotten. So it's like, this is clearly not right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
If you want to pivot and make progress fast, fail. But
yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, to be honest with you. I think it is. Yeah, that's a great way.
Fail on purpose. Yeah, like push yourself over the edge. I mean, things will happen really quickly because they had to. It was like a survival thing, right? When survival comes into play, mom can lift a car. It's that kind of thing. But if you don't want to fail, it's like, obviously I didn't think we were going to fail going into this. And financially, we didn't fail. But from a perspective of growing the business and our audience, I would say that we took a hit.
Yeah.
For sure. Financially, we were fine. But it was one of those things where if you want to pivot or add something new that's totally different to your business, just be sure that you're focused. Run it by a bunch of people. Make sure it's clear. Ask, see if people understand what you're doing, because here's the thing. Even if I had done that, like, Chris, do you remember? I wasn't really willing to hear anybody but the voice in my head during that time.
And I'll be honest with you, it's the first, like in 3.5 years that we've worked together, it's the one time you've ever been like that. And it was, and you remember the conversation. I remember that day vividly because I was so frustrated because I was thinking, she's so passionate about it. I'm clearly not getting this because I'm clearly not understanding this, and that was horrendous. But yeah, it's really interesting and comical to look back on, I think.
It is. And
Really.
I'm one of those people who I can logic my way out of anything, even if I'm not completely convinced of what I'm saying. So it was really easy for me to convince you and everybody else to jump off the cliff with me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, yeah. All right, we'll go with your saying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a position of authority. I'm telling you guys what we're going to do, and I'm also giving you very logical reasons we're going to do it. And I mean, one of the things I think we did do right, if you do want to pivot, is when we did our pivot and we did our announcement, we did a bunch of free events with people leading up into a paid product.
Yeah.
And I do think we did that right.
Yes.
Because the paid product kind of expressed what we did a little bit better. And it also gave people who wanted to continue to work with us an opportunity to continue to work with us on a very high level, which we had never offered before.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where if you do choose to pivot, make sure you have a product lined up that people can sort of jump on board with so that they can also better understand what you're doing. That was a huge game changer. It's what allowed us to financially survive during this time too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So very, very helpful to do that. And in retrospect, I'm shocked that it did well at all because we were so unfocused. Like, oh, August me was fully delusional. Like that bitch. Like, bitches be real crazy. She was fully nuts. And I think I was just blinded by the fact that like, we're pivoting. I've been wanting to do this for years and we're finally doing it. And I'm so excited. And of course that wore off pretty quickly when people started to freak out and we had to deal with the fallout. And then I was like, oh, this is going to be hard.
I mean, do you remember the conversation that we had? We had a conversation via voicemail, me and you, just like when I say voicemail, just to explain, we're talking about WhatsApp, like voicemail messages. And you'd sent me this message, and you know me, normally when you send me a message, I get back to you really quickly. And I remember you'd sent me this message and I'd listened to it, and it was basically saying, this is the direction that we're going in, this is what we're doing. And I was a bit like, I think she's really misinterpreting what I'm saying. And I had to record, I actually called you, didn't I? And it was on a Sunday, I think, and said, do you think I'm not on board with this? And you were like, yeah, that's exactly what I think. I was like, no, not at all. I am on board with it. But it was a really crazy time, wasn't it? It was a crazy time. And I think you were, I think from my point of view, I was like, whatever we do, I'm on board with. And I think you were so excited to just suddenly pivot. And I was like, okay, I'm not entirely understanding what we're doing, but okay, let's go with it. And it's just so interesting, like I say, to look back on it and just say, do you know what? Actually, it was. And the nice thing is also, and I also think we also learned a lot about each other, actually, like from a managerial and like employee point of view. I think we learned a lot about each other, just saying, well, even when it feels like the sky is falling, we're still able to sort anything. And I think it was brilliant, to be honest.
I think we had more of the sky is falling moment there than we ever had before. And we came out on the other side, I think, way more focused and way better off. And I mean, I've run numbers and I'm like, why didn't I run these numbers before on our previous business model? Like, and I've come up with solutions that were like, I bet you if I like do a live or a podcast about this whole time, November in a year, I'm going to be like, oh, this was when I realized that instead of making this super complicated and doing it this way, I was just going to do this one thing. And we'll see if that one thing works. But if it does, it's like I'm having all these realizations because of the fail, because my brain is freaking out or was freaking out a lot more. I'm having all these realizations of it needs to be simple. It needs to not take up all of my time, but I need to love it so that I'm willing to do it all the time.
Yeah.
And it also just needs to make so much sense to the customer. One problem we've always had in our business, and I think everyone feels this way, we have so many pieces. We have the blog, we have the podcast, we have another old blog, we have another website, we have a community, we have another community, we have a text group. What?
Yeah.
And now we're rolling those all into one uniform platform.
Yeah.
where everything is going to live at once. Free, paid blog, podcast, community, not like, even if you just want us to do something for you and you just pop in there once and ask for something, it's all in one place. And I'm looking back on what we did and I'm like, I was just opening up the can of worms and pulling more and more out. And at the time, of course, I thought I was doing the right thing. I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? But now I'm like, this was obvious. Yeah. I was limiting us by saying, well, this tool doesn't exist, or this doesn't exist, or we can't do this. Turns out it does exist, and we're going to do it. And if it's simple to us, it's going to be so much simpler to the people who work with us, or even just deal with our free stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just needs to be simple. Everything I'm doing is like, I'll write out the full list of what I think I need. And then I'll be like, simple version. What's the 3-step version that I need to do? Because honestly, that's all that's going to get done. Let's be real.
Yeah.
I can't complete a to-do list of 16 things, but I can complete a to-do list of 3.
Yeah.
So every time I'm asking myself, what's the simple version? Because I can always backtrack. If I screw something up, who cares? I can always backtrack and fix it. It's okay. But first I need things to like come together.
Yeah.
So I think that for anybody who is trying to figure out how their business looks, if you're confused or if you feel like you have a lot going on, your customers feel 10 times worse. Your potential customers feel 10 times worse about it too, and are 10 times more likely to leave if things are all over the place.
Yeah.
Just make it simple. Simplify it down into those 3 things that just make it simple. And if you can't explain what you're doing or what you're changing in one sentence, it's too confusing.
Yeah. And I think that was, yeah. And it's so funny because you and I have lived, well, I think you have lived by that much longer than I have. But now it's something that I live by, very much so. Very much so. Like I do say to a lot of people, especially when I'm coaching them, and a few, I'm sure there's a few people watching this that will know that I say this. And I'll say, okay, so sum it up for me in one sentence. Just sum it up for me what you're doing. Like, it sounds great. It sounds brilliant. It sounds wonderful. You know, fantastic. Give me the bow. Give me the bow. Wrap it up in a bow for me and tell me what it is. And you can do that in a sentence. And it does work. And I think sometimes just doing that also, just being able to sum up in a few words as possible, just makes things crystal clear as well sometimes.
Yeah. Like I said, if you can't do it, you don't know what you're doing. You're not focused. And it's no like shade. Like I'm not focused all the time.
Yeah.
Clearly. But it's definitely, if you can't boil it down into a sentence, you're confused.
Yeah.
You're overwhelmed. You're not down at the meat yet. You need to go further. It affects your life though, learning this, your life. Because I now say this to my husband, I'll be like, can you just give me the 1-sentence version? Because I'll be like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
You know, once you learn to do this skill, you notice it everywhere and you're kind of like, oh, I'm confused. And it's great because you can just stop and deal with that before you move forward. But with other people, they'll like give you the long version and you'll be like, what are you talking about? This is so ridiculous.
Sometimes you'll lose it. Yeah. Sometimes you lose the thread of it. You just lose and just go, okay. And I have no shame in admitting that when I first started working for you, I was guilty of this on an epic scale. I would come to you and say, you know, this piece of paper, what do I do with this piece of paper? This piece of paper is going to be doing this. It's going to change the world. It's going to, you know, what do we do with this piece of paper? And I can only think that there were times that you might have seen on some of those recordings, and Jenny might have just sat there and just gone, "What is he going on about? It's a piece of paper." You know, like what on earth? And yeah, and it's
This is one of the reasons that I do some of our like big long coaching on Discord, because I don't want everybody to see that I'm closing my eyes trying to focus on what they're saying, because when it's long and drawn out, I get lost.
Yeah.
And if I'm getting lost as a coach who does this all the time, how lost are you saying these things?
Yeah.
This is why the focus, if you do pivot, this focus needs to be really honed, because I mean, you and I are talkers, right? So there's nothing that we're better at than just not focusing and just talking our way through a problem. but not
That's
really
true.
necessarily solving anything. We're just talking a lot and processing, basically. So if you do decide to introduce something new or to pivot or to kind of change things up, just make sure that you are so clear on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because, man, it would have gone differently for us. I don't know if it would have gone financially better, but it would have been easier. But we also wouldn't have learned the lessons that we learned. Like, I feel like we've come a long way in just a couple months because of this failure.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
For sure. And that makes me feel really good because I like to move quickly. You just can't do it all the time. Your brain can't do it all the time. So on the rare occasion that it does happen and we really push ourselves like this, I'm like, let's fail more.
What else can I do? What else can I,
How else can we fail?
Screw up really badly. Yeah. Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I'm like experimenting a lot on all of our platforms, posting a lot of things. And it's like Instagram was pretty much a fail. YouTube is like kind of doing stuff, but not really. And I'm like, oh, this is a fail, but I want to fix this one. Instagram, I was like, you're stupid. You go over there. I'm going to just ignore you. You be over there.
I mean, we've not given up on Instagram. We came to the realization that we can do Instagram at any time, and it doesn't. And again, and a perfect example of it doesn't require our focus at this immediate moment in time.
No,
there are other more important things that we need to be getting on with. So,
yeah. When you can pick something up and get it going at any time, it's not urgent. It's not like the focus. And I kind of feel like Instagram is just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'll do things here and there, but I don't really intend to take it seriously for a little while until I'm 1,000% clear on my message. And I know exactly why I'm on Instagram and what purpose it's going to serve, which, I mean, I literally just did a ton of research on, who succeeds on Instagram for a YouTube video. I was like, I want to make a video about whether Instagram actually works for businesses or not. Because everybody's on Instagram, but we see out of all the people we coach, maybe one or two people a year who are making sales or any kind of progress on Instagram. By progress, I mean actual money is coming in. And I was like, does this even work? And the research I did was appalling. I was like, oh, wow. I did not realize how bad it was. I did not realize how time consuming it was. I did not realize how underpaid it was when you do make money. And I did not realize how much of an honestly pointless distraction it is that we all think we need. We all think we need a way for people to find us through exposure, but the stats are in and it's abysmal when it comes to discovery on Instagram. Instagram's real good at getting you more Instagram traffic because they want people to stay on their platform. But like, when it comes to actually doing something with Instagram, the people who are making it work are doing things that I'm just not willing to do. So that's kind of like
I feel that with Instagram, it's great almost as, and this is absolutely no disrespect to anyone who is doing it and doing it very, very well and succeeding at it.
If you're doing well, then you're doing well. Great.
But the people that I follow on Instagram, the people that I interact with the most, and the people that I talk with, are kind of doing Instagram almost as a hobby. They're kind of doing it almost either as not necessarily a creative outlet, but they're just being themselves. But they're not a business. It's just that it's those people. So they might just have a personal Instagram account. They're not actually selling anything. It's those ones that are getting all the followers. It's those ones that are getting the mass interaction on that one. Now, again, I'm more than willing for somebody to just go, no, well, actually, this is what's happened to me in my business. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just noticing on who it is that I follow and who it is that I interact with. Because that to me is, I suppose in my head, when I'm looking at that, it's more real. It's more real life. It's more, I'm interested in what's going on in that person's life, or when I'm watching a drag queen, on stage and dance. I find that interesting, and I find that interesting. But there's very few businesses that I actually interact with on Instagram or look at.
I would say that just finding these distractions that are wasting your time is half the battle.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, oh, you could do this on Instagram, you could do this, and you get distracted. You're like, I'm going to go off and do this. It sounds like fun. And you don't realize that big picture-wise, it's not going to do what you're trying to get it to do. And this was, I think, a lot of the problem that we had with our pivot, too.
Yeah.
Where it was like from a big picture perspective, we're trying to pull all these things from all these places, and we're not just honing in on what we need to do to clearly tell people what we're doing and have them participate in it. I mean, this is a big problem about what we did, that if I could turn back time, I'd be like, we should have involved our audience more in the pivot. If we're going to focus coach, then they should be submitting their to-do lists.
Yeah.
So I can break them down into focus items so
Yeah.
they can know. Do you want to do that? I have a form for it. Submit your to-do list. Let's go through it. I will go through it on my iPad and like draw it into little things, like put it in a focus map, all of that stuff. Those are kind of like those magical things where you can give people something that they want, or something that, because people don't really care. They don't really care that you're pivoting. They just care what's in it for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's like, well, what is in it for them? We kind of did our free stuff, showed people some stuff, sold our product, and then we just moved on with our lives. No, we needed to incorporate people in the transition. And we need to show people like, oh, this is what focus can do.
Yeah.
You've probably never been truly focused in your life. I hadn't until maybe a couple of years ago. I'm like the least focused human on the planet, which ironically makes me one of the best people to teach it, because if you're unfocused, I've seen it all. I've done it all. I've messed it all up already. And in just 2 years of focusing, I went from having like no retirement account to being worth $500,000. That I think says it all.
Yeah.
That was just me focusing for 2 years. And I'd never focused before, and I'd never gotten anywhere before. Suddenly, this thing I've never been able to do in my life just appeared as if from nowhere.
Yeah.
Same thing with the business. The business grew in income, like doubled in income, both of those years that I was focusing. All of a sudden, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think the best way I can sort of, relate this to other people is, how many times have we been out there and we bought something that actually, or done something like spontaneous? Because that's essentially what we did with pivoting the business. It was a spontaneous, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, bam, and we just went out there. And as you rightly say, we didn't do the interaction with the audience. We didn't do, we didn't have those conversations. And the best way I could relate that to everyone else is, how many times have you gone out and you're like, oh my God, that's brilliant, I need that in my life, and then you've seen it in a drawer 3 months later and go, why did I buy that? Why did I do that? And I think this is just the same as us, really. We did something. We did something, and we've learned fantastic things from it, absolutely amazing things from it. But looking back, would we have done a few things differently? Yeah, probably. maybe a couple of little bits differently. Yeah, sure.
For sure. So if you want to pivot, or you're thinking about this, like, I hope that you kind of got where we were saying. And honestly, the things I would say to sum up is focus. Definitely try and involve your audience in what you're doing. Make sure there's a clear place for them to see what you're doing, so they know what's going on. And if you really want to kind of speed things up, fail a little bit. It's okay to fail a little bit. It's okay to build in a little bit of failure, to be like, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I'm going to do it. Or to be like, I'm not sure where this is going, but I want to try it. It's okay to build in a little bit of failure. You'll learn. That will make 3 months feel like 10 years of you doing stuff, because that's what it felt like. And you'll get there faster in a way that you won't otherwise. Like, honestly, purposefully building in failures and big experiments that you're just not sure how they're going to go is going to teach you more than any amount of doing what you're already doing, because you know what you're already doing, and you're probably here because it might not be doing what you expected it to do. So try something totally different. See what happens. That's what we did. Man, we learned more than, I feel like all last year we learned more than we did in all in 2021 between August and November. Yeah, for sure. Maybe that was 2022.
Remember that failure isn't the end, and I think that's what a lot of people are terrified of. Failure isn't an end. Failure is a lesson, and that's
failure. I think is the beginning for us here. Yeah. This Absolutely. Failure, I think, is going to lead us to a completely different way that we're going to approach this in December and January.
Absolutely.
And without it, I think it would have been a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Failure is going to lead to our success. I think. I'm pretty sure. We'll get back to you on that. but I think it is.
Address that again.
Yeah. But failure is definitely, I think, going to lead to our success. Whereas before, if we had, mediocre success, that would have just led to more mediocre success because we would have just kept doing what we were doing.
And I don't think anything would have changed. I don't think anything would have changed in the long run. I think we still would have come back to this in a couple of years and gone, we did this and it didn't, this still doesn't feel right, 2 years later. So yeah.
For sure. 1,000%. That was beautifully said. So I think we would just chase our tail the same way we did in all of 2021 if we had mediocre success.
Yeah.
And all of 2020 too. So fail. Have fun doing it. Do it a lot. Don't be afraid of it. It is not the end of the world. I mean, we've seen a lot of, kickback in the last few months. And nothing bad happened other than we just had to talk to people.
Yeah.
You don't technically have to talk to people. We chose to talk to people.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I think if we had our time again, we just would have talked more. I think we would have had more of a conversation about it. But again, it leads me back to we're not perfect. By no means are we perfect. And I think we were so excited to go back to a place where we were more comfortable that we just didn't look at the big picture. And I think everyone's guilty of that. I think everyone's guilty of doing things like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it sucked to not be in a place that we were used to being.
Yeah.
You change your business, be prepared for it to suck. Even if you planned it out to be better, which we did, and which now, in retrospect, it is. Were you uncomfortable for the first few months? Because I was dying inside.
Yeah, for the first few, but again, that brings me to a conversation where I phoned you quite late from my time. It was about 11:30 my time. And I just said to you, I'm lost. I'm lost and I don't know. And I said to you, I'm completely lost and I don't know what to do about it. And I genuinely expected you to sort of, where you've done it before when I've been worried or stressed out about something, and you're like, right, sit down, explain it to me, what's happening. And I said to you, I'm lost and it feels bizarre and I don't know what to do. And you're like, oh, brilliant, thank God. And I was like, what? So am I. I was like, oh, right, thank God it's not just me. It's not just me losing my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, not only am I lost, but I have to figure out where we're going because everyone around me is lost. It's not good. It's like just even more pressure to kind of figure it out. But at the same time, like, I'm glad that happened. I'm glad it went the way that it did. And I'm also just really happy that we were lost together because it was like, okay, we're just going to be uncomfortable together. It did super suck. Now it doesn't. Now I'm like, oh, this feels light. This feels good. I have a lot more time to do things I want to do. I'm doing a lot more things I want to do. Chris is going to be doing a lot more things he wants to do. A lot of his stuff is transitioning in the new year and it's going to be huge for him.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time where we look at it, we're like, what is our future schedule going to look like? Ooh, look at this, but we were very, very uncomfortable. Definitely planning the lack of sleep and planning the like freaking out a little bit and just know, like, sometimes I will write things down and be like, I try to use the try it 3 times rule because I know something big is coming and I know that I'm not going to really like it, but I don't know how it's going to feel or where it's going to go or what it's going to do. So I'll write down the 3 rules, which is basically like I give it 3 chances to not make me miserable or to succeed. And the first thing I'll write down is kind of like, how am I expecting this to go? And the second thing I'll write down is, what if it doesn't go like that at all? What's my plan? And then the third thing I'll write down is, what if it is failing miserably? What is my plan then? And when I have that plan, I can look at it when things are going wrong and I can go, oh, I already thought about this while I was calm and reasoned. Now, while I'm freaking out, I can look at this and go, oh, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I don't have to make decisions while I'm freaking out because those decisions are usually not great. So that helps immensely. All of that is kind of a part of the focus map exercises we're going to be doing where we write all these things down and show you guys how to do it. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how you can kind of get your way through things that are uncomfortable by just sort of planning in advance a little bit.
I think we're just always a work in progress, aren't we? I think as humans, as businesses and things like that, I think we are always a work in progress. And I think over the last week, probably the last 2 weeks, I think I've heard the word perfect far more times than I would like to. Like people just going, oh, I'm just a perfectionist. I just want it to be perfect. And I've sort of sat there just going, it's never going to be, because it doesn't exist. Perfectionism doesn't exist. And just hearing you say that there, it's just that, yeah, we are always a work in progress as humans in our, in our personal lives, in our business lives, in our businesses and things like that. We're always going to be just work in progress. And
1000%. It's not always going to feel good. And people freak out when that happens. And I like to just plan for it not feeling good in advance, so that if it does happen, I have something to like look at.
Yeah.
But definitely, yeah, if you're thinking perfect, or if your fear is like, it's got to be better, it's got to be just this way. We've released more in the last few months that was just like, it's good enough, it's ready, because we knew we could work on it forever. And it's been fine. I don't even think it's made any difference at all. Nobody said anything to us.
Nope.
Nobody.
No, nothing at all.
So I don't think it matters. But I think we're reaching our time. Thank you guys for listening to us rant. And I hope that this helped you to kind of figure out how to cope with adding new things to your business, or like what to expect and how it will basically fall apart, and what to do when it does.
And to fail. And there's nothing wrong with failing.
It's totally fine to fail. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's actually quite helpful. So do it.
Absolutely. So.
Sure.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yes. Thank you, Chris. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for listening to us babble.
Have a good one, guys. Take care.
Bye.